Hey,
What you doing?
I'm Brandon Horwin,
And I'm Sophie Williams.
and today's special guest is...
I am Eleanor Holdridge, and I have directed and will continue to direct a lot of plays. And I teach at Catholic University, which is really wonderful.
Well, we are so excited and grateful to have you on the first inaugural podcast episode of Whatcha Doin with Brandon Horwin and Sophie Williams. And we're so thankful that, just so all of our listeners know, that Eleanor was just a extremely helpful and great pioneering force behind getting this project up on its feet. So thank you for that, and thank you for being on today.
I'm so excited about the program. I just can't wait to see what happens next.
So can you tell us a little bit about your career, both as a theater director and an educator, and just a little bit about how those two journeys began to mend? And
Sure. I guess I didn't want to be a director for a really long time. You know how some people are like, this is what I want to do from the moment, my vocation is this, from like junior high school or something. And I didn't. I didn't know that I wanted to direct. I danced for a long time. And I wanted to be a lighting designer for a long time, like in college. But like tracing it back, like when I was a little kid, my mom ran this company called Cadman, which actually produced spoken word records, like way, way back in the day when records were records. And so she was in recording studios. She was an Anglophile. So she was. I'm so sorry about my dog. This is where we are. But she was sort of an Anglophile, which is to me a little bit of a problem these days when you say, oh, Shakespeare can only be done by people with British accents. But the fact is, I grew up in recording studios with people like Laurence Olivier and John Gielgud. Like there's pictures of me and my twin sister on Dame Edith Evans' lap in a recording studio. So I kind of grew up around hearing Shakespeare, not seeing it, but hearing it. And she would play the records a lot and the recordings a lot. And so I think what I would do when I listened to them is imagine the worlds in which what I was hearing took place. So to me, I just wasn't, I didn't necessarily at that age, whatever, 6, 7, whatever, I understand all of the Shakespeare text, but I understood the story and the language. And so I started to create pictures. So I think that early process of exercising my imagination was like a little mine, or a little time bomb waiting to happen. So anyway, I graduated college. I was like, oh, I want to make a buck. So I went, I got a job in publishing, which is not a good way to make a buck anyway. It's like I was a little assistant director. But I started to become really frustrated. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And I saw a lot of theater, and I saw a lot of Shakespeare theater. And all I could think of was, I don't want to, it was a Midsummer Night's Dream. I saw this Midsummer Night's Dream with a friend of mine who also was very theatrical, had been done a lot of theater in college. And okay, it's like, it was Yale's and I ended up going to Yale, so whatever. But like, it was like, basically, Puck, Bottom played all of the mechanicals, and mechanicals were finger puppets. But when Bottom is translated, instead of just ears, they also strapped this like, fluorescent green, I'm going to say 3-foot phallus on him. And then it would like bob around and hit him in the face. And there was like, it was like in this little tiny downtown New York theater, and there was maybe 3 people, and some guy had brought his son to see Midsummer, and then they walked out of course they walked out, like the son was 8 years old. And so I started thinking, like, I do not need to see another Midsummer Night's Dream. What I want to see is other classical plays, like little known classical plays. And so even though by that point I was like, okay, I'm not working in publishing, I'm going to go work for Jerome Robbins as his assistant. And then I went and worked at the Public Theater in development. grant writing, all that kind of stuff. But meanwhile, I started this theater company to do the little known classics of Shakespeare. I mean, little known classics aside from Shakespeare, like Shakespeare's contemporaries, like, I don't know, like Marlowe, which seems like a lot of people do Marlowe, but no one was doing Marlowe back in the day. And so then we moved the company to Philadelphia. So I was now running a company, but someone had to direct the plays and we didn't have any money. So I just started to direct the plays. So about 4 years I just directed because someone had to. And then I loved it. You know, like the little time bomb from my youth, like kind of kicked in. I loved working with actors. I loved, you know, working with the designers to create the elements. And so I did that for like 4 years, 5 years. And then finally I realized I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. I mean, we can talk about imposter syndrome until the cows come home, but so anyway, so I was like this, and the company had reached a certain level and wasn't going to probably grow anymore. So I applied to graduate schools, got into Yale, went to Yale for 3 years. And then since then, after I graduated, I started freelancing. This is a very long story. I'm so sorry. But you asked for this.
It's a great story. It's great.
Yeah, so then I freelanced for, I don't know, like 10 years or something. And so the life of a freelancer director in America is not necessarily easy. You don't do a lot of work locally. I mean, if you want national, to get national gigs, national exposure, you go on the road. And so I was sometimes on the road directing regionally, sometimes 8 months out of the year. And you know, it's the thing we talk about, like you get a company, you have a company, and that company is your family. And then you move on to the next gig, and then that company is your family. But after 8 or 10 years about that, you have all of these ephemeral families and not a home, not an artistic home. So I started to apply to universities because I wanted to land somewhere, have a base, feel a community around me, pay back to students. And so that brought me to Catholic to teach.
That is great. And it's amazing how I never knew how you found directing through starting a company and just picking up the shows from there.
Mm-hmm. I did, and I loved it, you know, because before that I did some lighting design too, and lighting design I think it's pretty great because it's a little intellectual. You decide what people want to see, and you start, you know, and you collaborate with directors. So in a way, directing was just the next step in sort of seeing and forming the bigger picture of the world of the play.
And what are some of your most favorite projects over the years, being a freelance director and traveling all over the nation to pursue that craft? Do you have some that stick out to you and you still think about?
I do. I think I've done like 5, but the first 12th night I remember that because it's when everything started to come together. It may have been my first professional equity, whatever, production, but it was at Shakespeare and Company where I'd worked a bunch. I sort of interned and assisted directed, but then it was like my first big break that Tina Packard, the artistic director, gave me. And it was just this moment where I really sort of figured out what I was doing. Like I directed a lot of plays, but somehow everything started to click. And I think I started to develop, I had already gone to Yale at that point, but I started to develop my aesthetic, like what it is. You know, I love plays that have dense classical text, but also plays in which like you can create a magical world around that sort of fills the audience with a world and some kind of beauty, some kind of exploration of the human condition.
Right. Yeah, and so now you're the chair of the drama department.
Maybe, yes, I am.
And how has it been, both working as the chair and continuing your career as a freelance director around the United States? And how has it been challenging, or how has that process been to kind of tie those two together as a big part of your life going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tricky. I've only been chair for 2.5 years now. And so when I was just teaching, like it was a balance, like I would take 1 or 2 gigs a year away from school, and I managed to sort of juggle it and come back. But being chair is more problematic. And so I think there was a year when I took too many gigs outside. And so I wasn't, I mean, I was, doing the work of chair is really challenging. And one of the things that I really want to do and am proud of is putting together this new BFA program we have, because I think what we decided, we've been talking about it for years and no one did anything. So I became chair and I was like, okay, I would really like to make this happen. I think people want a professional degree coming out of undergraduate education now. And I realized that we could actually forge more skilled actors if we could offer more acting classes, which we can in the non-professional degree track of the BA. There's just too many requirements. But so finding a professional degree where we can, you take philosophy and you take religion and you take English and you take some core classes, but you can really then have an acting, a movement, and a voice class every single semester. And then to me, it's a degree for now and the future, because we've added this television. It's a BFA in theater, film, and television. And so adding the film and television part, I think, is really important, especially in DC, because I think we all understand in a way that to be a professional working actor, you either have to also teach or be on film and television to actually forge a living for yourself. And so I feel like I'm so proud of it. We start our first class next year. And so that's been a great objective. We talk about acting, you have an action and objective. So that with this objective of founding this BFA and getting it started, it's great to have that objective to drive all the actions towards them.
Absolutely. That sounds great.
Yeah. Well, so we'll see. We have a bunch of applicants already, and I'm looking forward to the auditions.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. So I'm curious. You were among, to my knowledge, one of the first people to transfer an in-person rehearsing production to a more virtual medium. So I just like to know, how did you, as a director, implement your vision to a fully realized production via Zoom recording?
Yeah, so it was measure for measure. We had rehearsed it for 1.5, maybe 2 weeks at Catholic, and we all left on spring break, and we were like, see ya. And then of course we got the news that we weren't going to come back together. So yeah, I was like, well, people need something to work on to get through these times. Like at the time, I think we thought we were going to be in lockdown for like maybe three months, maybe 2 months. I don't know. We kept thinking we were going to come back. So I felt like we had to do something, but I asked the cast first if they would be willing to do it, and they were. And so, I mean, I think that I was learning so much at the time, like how to get Shakespeare on tape, how to tell a story. So I made edits. We reworked the script a lot, which is great because Shakespeare's in public domain, so you can do that. And really tried to form a story based on the actors, and looked at links for what it was like to be living now in the text of Measure for Measure. The sense of isolation, the sense of choice being really important, the sense of stakes in that play were really helpful.
Awesome. That's a really great answer. I was genuinely very curious about that. So just bouncing off of that question, what did you change from your first virtual production, if anything, to your most recent virtual production?
Okay, well, I've only done 2.
Well,
that's not true. I've done something. I've done little video things in class, but a lot. Like I like everyone else, our first rehearsal was one of the first or second Zoom things I'd ever done. So just sort of figuring out what the medium can do or not was tricky. I think we did have some video editors, but we added the sound. But I think that there were moments of just seeing faces for very long in the Zoom format is not engaging. So to look for other ways of making it more interesting, and not just rotating the tiles around, which we've seen a lot,
Mhm.
but finding ways to do a hybrid, I think, of film and Zoom.
Mhm.
You know, so in film, you know, you often have two cameras, and so you can see people's faces from very, you know, intercut with various. You see this side, and then you cut to something else, or you fade to something else. So in the Saira Song Cycle project, um, I really wanted to do a hybrid of filming and zooming, but in the Zoom having the performers take different different takes, let's say, of the material, and then jumping back and forth between takes. And it would depend on the story of the song. I worked with the performers to say, what story does this song, what story do you want to tell with this song in your present right now in the time of COVID? And so working with them to come up with stories, and the process was I asked them what they wanted to do. Based on that, I came up with a storyboard of this happens and this happens in terms of the various shots. Then they would film themselves on their cameras, or I and Michael Stolbarg, who was the assistant director, would film them, and then intercut them together. But what's really interesting is that in that process, you learned that just like directing a play, you have to react to what you have. So you have a storyboard, which is great. You get all the material from the storyboard. You're like, my original story isn't going to work with the footage that I've got. So you have to be open to like what's coming at you in terms of the film. Just like in a directing process, you have to be aware and interested, like, oh, this actor is now doing this. Like, I don't want to be stuck with this idea that was in my head. I have to respond to the moment and to what the actor is doing and what the actors are doing in relationship to each other. So it's a very similar, but quite different at the same time. And I mean, Brandon was in my class when we were critiquing it, and I love critique. I love getting response, even if it's not all positive, especially if it's not all positive, because I feel like I'm learning tons of new things, which is amazing, and that I want to try and get better and better at it, even if in a year or two I just go back to doing regular plays. But I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that with what I'm learning in this time, which is so thrilling and exciting, that it won't somehow blend or affect the work that I do on plays in the future.
Yeah. So, just going off script, I have a question. So, what exactly was your vision for Saira during the time of COVID? Because Brandon and I we've been discussing recently about, trends in theater over history. And, in my classes, I've learned, it kind of flips from, it's reflecting the times, it's escapism, it's reflecting the times, it's escapism. So, in my viewing of Saira, I was no longer in COVID. I was in France, having like a great time. It was like an awesome like form of like, oh, I'm somewhere else. This isn't real. So
yeah, I kind of wanted that in a couple ways. I wanted it to be now and exactly what you're talking about, so that and it's called Saira. So it's France. We're in France. We're not in France. Where are we really? There's so much. I love the French language section. So. I guess a couple things. Like the framing device was Maria Heitman singing this song, "Don't Leave Me." She's walking the opening credits. She's walking through campus. So I like the idea of acknowledging that campus is closed down, and that she comes across this poster of Saira, and I think it's like she imagines or regrets or wishes for that life to happen that was going to be in this play that was maybe in Hartke, because you see her outside Hartke Theater. And that then through that you go into these very different, all these videos of the different songs are very, very different. And so the idea is that it's people maybe alone but coming together with their very different ideas. So some are celebratory, some are sad, some are wistful, some are funny. And I very much wanted it to be all of those things. And then in the very end, and maybe it's a little too, I don't know, first year film school, but I'm in my first year of film school, I guess. So she's, you see her walking past the ghost light. And to me, that's just a metaphor that, you turn the ghost light when you leave the theater, but at some point you're going to come back in and fill it. So that's what I wanted to do with that. The other thing I want to say about the production is that I've seen in the past, I don't even know how long it's been, but in the past 5 months, I've become very aware of what is the audience interaction. And I think as an audience in a theater with people surrounding you, with the idea that anything could happen on the stage, there's a kind of presence, I think, that as an audience person you have that is deadened after just seeing something that's pre-recorded that's coming at you through Zoom. It's a little different from, I think, a live streamed something like a play reading or something. But anyway, I think that's why I wanted to come up with this interactive component. So if you haven't seen it, like, this is where the audience can pick what scenes they want, what language they want it in, because I very much wanted the audience to feel like I have to be involved to do the next thing. Like, the audience has to engage with it, which I think is just so important right now, because in a way you don't have that engagement of the live theater experience with the audience and the performer, but you can have that engagement by having them pick something, so that there's, in the theater, you can choose where you look. You can choose what you're going to see next or how you're going to experience. Like, I had so much fun, especially in the ones where you are going back and forth between languages, which I saw many times. And sometimes I would just be, and the Marika was so brilliant in how she sound edited it, like it matched up perfectly. So to go from each language to language anytime I wanted to, I thought was thrilling. Yep.
That is excellent. I mean, it really was a superb production, and it felt different than anything I had seen thus far because of that interactive component, and because that my participation felt, as you said, like I needed to get to the next step by being involved somehow. And I think it was a masterful way of putting it on the screen, but yet allowing us to still have a voice within the art that we were a part of.
Yeah, when I first started thinking about it, it was very frightening in a way, because as a director, I always think my idea is to author the action of the story. And so as that means I'm creating the arc of it. So it was, so that was the challenge, right? How is there still an arc to the pieces when the audience can choose the order? So I think that's why we came up with chapters, so I could make sure that they weren't choosing the two super sad songs right next to each other. So each chapter had a lot of different kinds of songs, so that the dances were spread out. There were only 3 dudes. The 3 dudes were spread out among the chapters. So just so that I felt like there could be some arc, even though there was choice within it.
And that's great, because you sort of answered my next question in regards to being a director in the industry. And do you think, there will be a time when we're all going to be able to go back in the theater together, as if, we have a large cast and everybody can be together and performing for a live audience. But you had already said that you're going to take the skills that you've learned in terms of, a virtual platform, that, they do hold merit for you, that you're going to take these skills and plan to use them in the future regardless. So pairing that with, what advice do you have as a director within the industry, as well as an educator currently working with college students studying the arts, for, students that are trying to break in the industry, or, young artists that are trying to continue to, mold their craft in a completely, what it feels like, everlasting shutdown world?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say do work. What's amazing is that anyone can take videos on their cell phones. So to actually get people are hungry for work and connection. So to find projects and be in projects that then can create, so that you're actively doing something. That's why I'm so excited about this podcast, because you're actually engaging, discussing the arts, discussing how being an artist is, what that means for someone. And I think that by continuing to be involved, not just sitting home and waiting for the next thing to happen, but to pitch people things, to just create stuff. And what's really wonderful is that as long as what you're doing is in the public domain, we're finding that actors and performers now will have a reel. Like coming from this, you actually have a piece of video that you can say, here's what I did. So that it's really helpful, I think, moving forward. And exciting. I think if you don't, I think if we don't embrace where we are right now, we're going to be dinosaurs whenever we walk back into the open air again with each other. So yeah, I think just do work, just keep doing. Yeah, I guess that's my advice.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I definitely feel that right now. Just like, I think that's essentially why we started doing this, just because, oh God, like I have nothing to do. You know what I mean? Like I have classes and everything, but normally during this time, like I keep getting memories on like all my social media about like, you were in this show this year, you were in this show this year. And I'm like, great, thank you for reminding me. I'm like wearing sweatpants right now in my bed doing absolutely nothing. So yeah, I definitely feel that, just having, some sort of creative outlet, because we are just like creative people that constantly need to be doing something, God, like anything.
Yeah. And I think just to go back to that sense of like, what is like as artists, like the idea of exercising our imagination.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes I find like many artists, if they're not exercising their imagination towards something positive, start like going crazy, because your imagination is still your best tool and it's going to crazy places. So yeah, I think this is a good time to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So just congratulations on all of your virtual productions. They've been like huge successes in the drama department. Is there anything else coming up that, in the drama department or outside that you'd just like to promo on here really quickly?
Sure, I would. There's a couple things in the drama department. We're going to be doing, War of the Worlds, I think, is this weekend. Yes. So that's going to be exciting, the radio play. And then the Socially Distant Play Festival at the drama department is coming up, and I'm going to be directing one of the 10 plays. And I think that's going to be a hybrid of lots of things, and it seems really exciting. We're talking about doing Yerma. I have nothing to do with that directing, but it would be Natalia Gleason is going to probably be doing that outside next semester.
Yes.
Inside, but with a live cast. So isn't that exciting?
We love Natalia.
Oh my gosh, I know. And then I may be doing a project with students at University of Maryland in Orlando. Doing this project based on Orlando. That should be really exciting, outdoor, maybe puppets. Like how do you get people to be intimate? And so I'm thinking about puppets, which I've never done before. So yes, exciting too.
Nice.
And then I think there's Pippin. Like, so about 2.5 years ago, I was going to be doing Pippin, or I was asked to do Pippin at Olney, and then it was postponed, and then it was postponed, and it was postponed. So now it's due to happen in spring 2022.
Okay.
Exciting. Very
excited for that production.
Me too. I hope it happens. I sometimes joke that like the Pippin will be too old to play Pippin by the time
That's good.
Well, this was incredible. It was so great to launch this series and have you as the first guest to come on and offer up some great words for future artists, current students, and just to hear about what you've been doing and your journey through the arts and education and everything. You're an incredible inspiration to your students, your fellow faculty, and all artists out there who really want to achieve their dreams.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. I love hearing, a female perspective. I think a lot of the times at Catholic, I love my male mentors. They're great. They've helped me so much. But, I think for me personally, I've just lacked, a kind of female voice, especially for directing. I'm in the midst of like a directing project at the moment, so it was
What
really
is it?
it's for Center Stage. I'm doing a Sondheim cabaret for his
Oh, that's thrilling.
yeah. So I just love kind of like hearing people talking about directing. It really just kind of like opens up, you know, a lot of thoughts for me. So thank you so much for
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
that.
Thank you, and come back soon.
Okay. I'll just dive bomb your future podcast.
Yes, that'll
Yeah.
be great. Thank you so much, Eleanor. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.